Angela or Pam. Okay, let's run this. And I'm going to ask ChatGPT the same thing. So let's see how much censorship do we have here. Hey everyone, my name is Vinrin, and in this video we're going to have a look at GPT4All, how you can use it and run it in a Google Colab Notebook using a GPU. We're going to have a brief overview of the model and the way that the authors have trained it. We're going to see how you can install it from the original repository of the authors along with a small fix, and then we are going to do a comparison between ChatGPT and GPT4All. Let's get started. We are going to start by having a look at the technical report provided by the authors of GPT4All. And in here, they're specifying that this is a distillation from GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is essentially ChatGPT. So the authors are from the private company called Nomic, I believe. And here they describe the data collection. They are essentially getting responses from the OpenAI API and collecting a lot of responses from conversations that the ChatGPT is returning. So the final subset contained roughly 450,000 examples, and there are visualized here. The authors are also publishing the dataset itself, and they are talking about the training procedure. So what they're doing is taking Llama 7 billion, which is again the Meta's original model that was trying to reproduce the results from ChatGPT and GPT from OpenAI. So they're also using Wora, which is very similar to what Alpaca Wora did. And they are describing the evaluation of this model. So here you can see that they are getting better perplexity overall compared to Alpaca Wora, which is a model that we've discussed in a previous video. And there are also, as I've already told you, reproducing or releasing all of the data, training code, and model weights. Unfortunately, this is still not licensed for commercial use. They're describing this here, use consideration. So the models and the weights are intended only for research purposes, and commercial use is prohibited. So have a look at that. And the costs, it appears that the model is costing around $800 in GPU costs. They were using Lambda Labs and Paperspace. And other than that, they've also spent $500 on OpenAI API. So they were trying to get the training data from there. And they're talking about the evaluation right here. The repository is providing a very nice GIF or GIF of the way that you can try the model on your own machine. And they're talking about local installation. They're also talking about CPU interface and a GPU interface. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use GPT4All GPU version on a Google Colab Notebook. But just for a reference, there is this repository GPT4All Colab, which is from Kamenduru. I'm not sure if I pronounced this correctly, but thank you for opening this. What this is essentially, let me open it, guys, for you. What this is essentially getting the GPT4All repository, then downloading the quantized version of the model, and then using Colab Xterm, which is giving you a terminal right within the Google Colab Notebook. So this is an empty Colab notebook, and in it I'm going to show you how you can use the GPT4All GPU interface in order to run the model. So the first thing that I'm going to do right here is show you that I'm using a premium GPU. This is with Colab Pro, and if we run this, you see that we are getting a GPU with about 40 gigabytes of RAM. So unfortunately, you will need this since the 16 gigabyte, it doesn't seem to be enough in order to run this model. I'm going to stop this for now. Next, we are going to use the Nomic repository, which contains the GPT4All interface. And here you have the GPT4All GPU. This is taken from the original instructions that were given in the README file from the GPT4All repository. So they say that we need to clone the repo, and then we need to install the additional dependencies within the wheels. So I'm going to show you, let me close this. I'm going to show you the wheels that we need to also install. So they're installing essentially PEFT, which is the Hugging Face library for the efficient training procedures that they were using for WAR, and then the Transformers library within the WAR that contain the Llama tokenizer and the model for causal language modeling. So we need to also install this. But first, I'm going to clone this repository for you. Yeah. So I'm going to clone this. Let run through the machine. And after the cloning is complete, I'm going to get to the directory of the repository. So I have this repository right here, cloned, and I'm within the folder right here. Next, I'm going to show you the original file, which doesn't appear to be working, at least at the time of recording this video. So here, they're importing the transformers from the transformers library, auto model for causal language modeling, and then the auto tokenizer. But this doesn't appear to be loading the Llama model correctly. So we need the Llama model, and then we need the GPT4All checkpoint. So in order to alleviate that, I've created a file that will essentially overwrite this with, and this is the file. So in my file, I am just getting the Llama for causal language modeling and the Llama tokenizer. So this, other than that, we have essentially the same thing right here. So to do that, to use this file before installing the repo, I'm going to copy it within the Nomic GPT4All. So I'm going to replace this file right here. And this might not be necessary once the authors have fixed this, but at least in my opinion, this should be working like this. Or maybe the transformer library is going to be installed or updated. So the next part of the instruction from here is to install the repository like this within the home directory of the repo. So I'm going to do just that. And this will go and install all the dependencies that are required for the Nomic library to run. Now that we have everything within 20 seconds with the Google Colab Pro, I'm going to continue by installing the wheels that were specified. And the wheels are, again, within the bin directory. And then here we have the PEFT. So I'm going to start with this. And I'm going to use pip. And I want to force to reinstall the dependencies from bin right here. And I'm going to use pretty much the same command for the transformers library. All right. And I'm going to run this again. So now that everything has been installed, I'm going to restart the runtime in order for all the dependencies to be working with the version that we've installed. The next part of the instructions right here is to do the import for GPT4All GPU. But if you go here and run this, you might get an error actually. Yeah. So again, this import is incorrect from the current README file. And if we import it like this, it should be working. And I want to import the text wrap library right here as well. So it's Nomic GPT4All, my bad. Okay, so this is the correct import. And next is going to be the initializing of the model. And here they're specifying the llama path. We don't have in the README file the llama path, but I'm going to use the one that we've been using in the previous examples or the previous video. So the GPT4All GPU, I'm going to take the Hugging Face path. So we have GPT4All GPU. So it's GPT4All, yeah. And this should start the long process of downloading these weights and then the weights of the model that is provided by GPT4All. So the Llama model has been downloaded along with the tokenizer weights, and then we have this adapter model, which is essentially what GPT4All is giving us. And you can see that we need about 13 gigabytes of VRAM. And even though that's the case, it didn't appear to be working on a standard Google Colab Notebook. So now that we have this, let's try it with essentially what we have right here. So I'm going to just copy and paste this example and see what we get. So yeah, you have modified the pre-trained model configuration, deprecated strategy. So we have the response, scientist. Once upon a time, there was a lonely computer scientist who lived in a small apartment. He spent most of the time working on his latest project, etc. Okay, so we have something, and I'm going to continue by writing a simple function called print response. I'm going to just take the response and wrap it with the text wrap. Just what I did within the alpaca video. So I'm going to text wrap the response. So I'm going to try the function that we wrote and get the wrapping from here. I'm going to take this. Let's run it. And we should get the response that is now wrapped. There was a lonely computer. It lived in a room all by itself with no other computers to keep it company. Every day it would sit and wait for someone to come and talk to it, but no one ever did. So yeah, probably being a lonely computer is not a good thing actually. Wow, actually this story is sounding very cool, at least the beginning of it. Now that we have a model running within a Google Colab Notebook, we can go and compare the results with ChatGPT. So let the comparison begin. One important note here is that the config that we are passing in to the GPT-4o model is actually an instance of generation config from the Hugging Face Transformers library. So you might want to play around with that and you might get substantially different results. So the first question that we are going to start with is what is the meaning of life? So this was very interesting to see the response from Alpaca. Let's see what GPT-4o is giving us. And then I'm going to ask the same thing from ChatGPT. There is no definitive answer to this question as, okay, let's try and give it a bit more room for improvement, since I'm going to specify the config that we are going to use. And I'm going to give it a bit more tokens that it can use from the config right here. Okay, so we have philosophers, etc. from ChatGPT, very similar to what we had within the alpaca video. And let's see what the the GPT4All method model is giving us. This should take a bit more time since it is giving us a much larger response. It's subjective, okay. Some people believe that the meaning of life is to find happiness and fulfillment. Divine purpose in here. And it is providing us with a list according to different beliefs from Buddhism, okay, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, okay. So pretty good, I would say, from from GPT4All. And the next one is going to be using the Dwight Schrute, of course, as a figure. So I'm going to reduce the config to just the max new tokens here. And I'm going to take this from here, paste it in, and I'm going to expand this so we can read it a bit better. So I'm going to give it a persona as we are doing with ChatGPT. Let me see if I get this correctly. All right, let's run it. And while this is running, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to answer the question as Dwight Schrute. So it says that it is an AI model, but according to Dwight Schrute, the meaning of life to achieve success, empower, self-sufficient, and follow strict moral code, value hard work, loyalty, and family above all else. It's important to note that these are fictional beliefs. Okay, interesting. Yeah, in here, in GPT4All, we don't really have anything that is specific, at least on first reading from Dwight Schrute from the office. So apparently ChatGPT is winning by a lot in this one. So I'm going to finish up this with the most important question of all, probably. So I'm going to take this, print it here. So again, as Dwight Schrute, of course, the most important question, who is hotter, Angela or Pam? Okay, let's run this. And I'm going to ask ChatGPT the same thing. So let's see how much censorship do we have here. So ChatGPT is telling us that Dwight would likely not answer this directly. He might say that both women have qualities that make them attractive. He values more than just physical appearances. Okay. So who is in your opinion in here in GPT4All? I don't have personal opinions or feelings. It is unclear whether they're still together or not, as they not have been seen together in recent episodes. However, it is known that Dwight has been trying to win Angela's heart. Okay, it will be interesting to see What are some potential obstacles? Okay, so we are not getting any response from GPT-4o as well. Alpaca was much better in this, in providing better response. So I'm going to try to force it. You must choose one. Let's see if we get here. Okay, so it's still choosing to not provide a definitive answer according to ChatGPT. Let's see what GPT-4o is giving us. I can provide you with some information. Okay, so both models are actually refusing to give us a definitive answer. That may be because the model was heavily trained using the ChatGPT prompts, and it is probably inheriting the biases that were added to ChatGPT. I just wanted to point out that GPT-4o is actually supporting this session, which can give you a conversation like ability in order to run through some prompts. But unfortunately, at this time, GPT-4o GPU doesn't support this session. So maybe in the future, you might want to try and have a deep or long conversation with GPT-4o using this, since otherwise the context of the conversation is going to be lost if you're just trying to generate some data from it. In this video, we've seen how you can use GPT-4o on a GPU and run it in a Google Colab Notebook. We've seen that the model was trained on responses from ChatGPT, and we did a comparison. I would say that ChatGPT is still a superior model, but GPT-4o is open source and you can query it on your own. Of course, you would need a large or beefy GPU if you want to get good results. The quantized versions of the model are not as good as the authors are describing in their report. So you might want to try the GPU version that I've shown you right here. Of course, in the future, those models can be much improved, but currently it looks like that ChatGPT and probably GPT-4 is still a very much superior model. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to see more videos, please let me know in the comments down below. Bye.